Recording. Okay, we're good.
Oh
Hello.
my God. It's been a month since we filmed something. Hi, you guys. It's your Pervy Cap counselor, Shawwall 360.
And Mason.
And you know it's good when you finally hear,
Raycon Topany. Finally. A GMMTV, a Raycon Topany. We're back in business.
Yes. And it's so crazy because I think the last thing that I watched with GMMTV was Tonhon Chalati. I did not think I would ever be excited to talk to you guys about a GMMTV property again. But look, here we are. Miracles actually do occur.
Shocked. Especially because this one took super long to make, because this was supposed to come out last year.
So I guess we should say the title of what we're reviewing.
Yeah. Well, they can read the title of the video.
Yeah, you'll get it. It's Tale of a Thousand Stars. Now, I am not certain about the name actually, because I went to look up this drama on my drama list, and if you type in Tale of a Thousand Stars, it doesn't come up. But it
comes up as Tale of Thousand Stars, which I think is how I'll title the video, because that's how I keep seeing it come up. But like, for our own grammatical sake, we have to say Tale of a Thousand Stars. Otherwise, I'm gonna be bothered.
I mean, it's either Tale of a Thousand Stars or a Tale of the Thousand Stars. But sounds better to me. But yeah, the translation throws me off.
For sure.
Yeah. So I guess, do you want to do a brief synopsis? There are plot twists and turns that probably should not be included in the synopsis. But yeah, do you want to? Because there is a little plot twist at the end. Well, not at the end. What, episode 8? Episode 7 or 8 is when we find out the plot twist?
I don't know what plot twist you're talking about. I thought this was a very cut and dry show. So I'm excited.
It was cut and dry, but finding out kind of what caused the main action to take place, it was surprising to find out the root cause when that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, so synopsis. Mason, you're the master at this. Lead us in.
It's a very simple story. It's about a guy. It's not that simple. A lot happens. It's about a very rich kid named Tian who has like a heart condition, and he's out partying with his friends one night, and he just passes out. And he needs to have a heart transplant like that. Thankfully, there is a donor that is available, and with his family's connections, they're able to kind of get bumped up the list a bit, and he's able to have the heart transplant and live. Well, the person who he got his heart from, her name was Torfun, and she was a teacher up in northern Thailand, basically in like a farm. And he was like, I'm doing nothing with my life, but I have her heart now. I guess I'll try and be a good person. And he goes to teach there too. So he goes from being super rich kid to living in a hut with no electricity, no running hot water kind of thing. And there he meets Pupa, right?
Okay, this was a debate in my house because I kept calling him Fupa, and my daughter was like, Mom.
You can't say Pupa. No, we're not doing that. No, we're gonna do Pupa.
Okay, because like in my heart of hearts, it is Fupa.
But that doesn't make sense because it's spelled Phupha. So it can't be. You can't have the P. It could be Fufa, but no, I think it's Pupa.
Okay,
I don't think the PH is supposed to be an F sound.
It's much better. It's just poop with an A, Pupa.
Listen, the name doesn't work in English at all. Should we just call him Captain?
Yeah, call him Chief. Let's just call him Chief.
Okay, he works in the army, I guess. I don't understand Thai politics enough to understand what this random army man was doing out here in the farm, but like whatever. Okay, it's just a cultural difference. It's fine, whatever. And basically they just fall in love. Tian's very like, he's a bit more, he was like a rich kid, but he's like really trying now. And then Chief is like this kind of more stern, stuck up, like follow the orders kind of guy. And it's just how Tian learns to basically just become a good person and learns to follow his heart. and not listen to what his mom or his parents wants, what other people are influencing him with.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about Mason's confusion about what Chief is, because there's actually a reason behind that. For those of you who might not know much about the history of the show has been delayed for a really long time. This was a show we were supposed to get, I think, mid 2020, and then coronavirus happened and it pushed everything behind. Not only that, but the show was also pushed behind because together the series got super popular, and this show was supposed to be the next show, but because Together was so popular, instead they decided to do another season of Together, Still Together. They decided to post what was the name of the show? The Boys Love Crazy show. The Shipper. They posted
the Shipper. Yeah.
So they pushed the show back, and then with COVID happening, got pushed back even more. In fact, I want to say that the actor who plays the doctor in this show isn't even with GMMTV anymore because it got pushed back so many times. But one of the big controversies that happened while they were pushing the show back is the fact that the source material for this show is, of course, a boys' love novel, and the character of the Chief is actually in the military. And the problem is, in Thailand, there's a lot of stuff going on right now between the military, civilians, the Thai government. It's a lot. And GMMTV, in order to not have any sanctions against them or be seen as being disrespectful to the military, Chief can't be in the military in this show. So instead, he's a part of a special forest ranger service that protects the forest from poachers and people who want to steal lumber and that kind of thing. But It was an adjustment that was made from the source material because they don't want the Thai military to think that GMMTV is saying that there are gay people in the military, even though, I mean, come on now. Of course there are. Of course there are. Because they do a lottery system just like Korea does. So of course there are. But that's the reason why you also have that really weird, this doesn't portray real people, real events type of thing. They got in a little bit of trouble with it with The Shipper because they had the teacher that was sleeping with a student. So they had to start doing that disclaimer because that was a major plot point in The Shipper. But in this one, they just want to make it clear like, hey, we're not saying that people in the military are gay. So don't get mad at us. Which it's so stupid because, come on.
Yeah, well, the two of us cannot change the Thai government, but.
No, we can't. So when the story starts out, the very first episode, I was like, okay, I like the way this is starting. I wasn't understanding why we were starting one side, like just, hey, I'm out here gambling and having fun with my friends, while the other one was like a commando unit getting to take down some criminals. I'm like, it's an odd contrast here. But yeah. I do like the fact that it does set up that these are two individuals living in completely different worlds. Like there's nothing about them that's similar. And then we get an introduction to Torfund. And I really appreciate that they let us have an introduction to her before the heart transplant, because I was thinking to myself, she gets talked about a lot in this show. Even though we don't get a lot of flashbacks of her, we get a few here and there, but she gets talked about a lot. And I like that the first introduction we have of her is us seeing that her life isn't easy, and I think that was really important because there's a lot of guilt related to this story, because in the very beginning, trigger warning for death, I guess, Torfund is having an argument with her aunt, and her aunt's upset because her aunt wants money from her. And you get the gist from the conversation that her mother had died and that her aunt had maybe been raising her, and her aunt didn't really necessarily care about her. And so, she was dealing with a lot of family issues with her aunt just basically wanting money from her. Well, she gets off of the bus and is going to take a cab back to her aunt's house because she's home on break. And she has this photograph of someone, and the photograph flies into the road. And unfortunately, Torfund is not smart. And she decides to bend down in the middle of the road, to pick up this photograph. And instead of scurrying back over to the sidewalk like most people would, like a quick yoink, instead she decides to sit and stare at the photograph in the middle of the street, and bam, is hit by a car.
Yeah.
Now, we find out later that the car that hit her was actually a car that was involved in street racing. So there's a good chance that the car that hit her could have broke, but maybe they were going so fast that they didn't have the chance to brake, and they might have been even exceeding the speed limit. But also, like, this girl is 24 years old. You know better. You know better.
They phrased it in the show that she was run over, which to me implies that she was literally like run over. And then the guy was like, oops, and then paid off the family.
Yeah, well, she was crouching in the middle of the freaking road. Like, she
Right.
sat there for a minute. I was watching it in double speed, and even I was like, you were here far too long.
Yeah. Not only that, but when she saw the car coming, she was like, I'm standing right next to the curb.
Literally that.
It's like, literally just take a step to the curb. Like, even like move the top half of your body. So like, shit, you might have a broken foot that gets run over by the car, but like, at least you're not dead.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, not to speak ill of the dead, but girl, this is kind of your fault. Also, I really like the actress who plays Torfund. She's in a show that I watched called Friend Zone, and she's one of the only decent characters in that show. So I really like that actress a lot. I was glad to see her have something here. But anyway, her death, because she identified as an organ donor, leads her heart to being donated to Tian. And Tian gets this heart, and he, of course, is curious about where did this heart come from, because you know, he was anticipating death. He had found out after he was playing sports with one of his friends, I think they were playing croquet or badminton, he passes out. And when he passes out, he finds out from the doctor that he's contracted some sort of virus that is attacking his heart, and he doesn't have long to live. So he's been living this really reckless life because he figured, well, I don't have any time left anyway, so what the fuck?
Right.
But with this new heart, it means a new life. And who wouldn't be curious about who gave me this second chance? And also because the timing is immaculate. I mean, to the point that you would almost be suspicious that your family ran over somebody to get you that heart. You're like, who did we kill? So he gets this heart, and he decides to look into the matter, and he finds out that the heart was given to him by a young lady named Torfund, who died in a car accident, and kind of wanting to know more about her and her life, to know, like, where was she headed before this happened to her, before I pretty much stole her life. He goes to the house that was listed as her address in the medical records and runs into her aunt. And she is one of the few people in this show that I really wanted to smack the shit out of. There were a couple of characters I was mad at, but she really was the one that I'm like, I want to fight you.
She fully did not care that her niece had died. She's like, oh, she died. She was a burden anyways. Like,
yeah, like she was angry that he had showed up. Like, oh, are you here to get gambling debts? That girl was useless to me. She was no good to me. And it's like, you know, regardless of how you may have felt about things, this is still somebody who died, and died fairly recently. You know, have a little bit of sympathy. Not only that, but like, from the way it sounds, her aunt got a lot of money when Torfund died, because the family of Tian paid to cover up the accident so that his friend Prim wouldn't go to jail. I'm sorry, I'm giving it away. Anyway, paid to cover up the accident that caused Torfund to be killed. And they paid an expedition fee in order to be able to get this heart. So the aunt probably made out like a bandit after Torfund died. But here she is bagging up Torfund stuff in garbage bags to throw it away.
Maybe. I mean, the aunt seemed like super poor, so maybe like they kind of lowballed her, and to her it was a lot of money, and she kind of took it and ran.
It could have been, but she acted like she didn't get anything out of it. She acted like, oh, I've just been so inconvenienced by even having her in my life.
Right.
And it's just, fuck you all day, lady.
Well, she probably didn't get any of like the organ donation money, right? That would probably went to the hospital. Like that was what the whole hospital, like, oh, your dad gave a lot of money to the hospital for you to live.
The hospital got money from the organ donation because they mentioned that the father gave a lot of money to the hospital. But there was also talk about money being given to cover up the accident. And it just seems to me like that money would have gone to the person's family who was in the accident. And so I feel like the aunt got a good chunk of money to keep her quiet. And for her to just act like, what's the least you could do because I've been inconvenienced. It's just, fuck that lady. The wrong person got hit by a car here.
Right.
So he goes to the aunt's house and there's a box that has Torfun's belongings. And I don't know what he thought he was going to find, but he finds what looks to be a diary. And I don't know, maybe it's not a big invasion of privacy because we're talking about a person who's died, but it still feels like a very personal thing to take for somebody you don't know, that you're not related to, that's already given you so much already. But to move the plot along, takes the diary, starts reading through it, and he realizes that this was somebody who was really happy in life, who was living a very fulfilled life. And even though we did get that glimpse that Torfun's life wasn't perfect, we still could see that like she was doing something that she felt was worthwhile and something that gave her a lot of fulfillment. And his life has been empty. It's been gambling and drinking and fast cars and fast people. It hasn't really meant anything. And even the part of his life that isn't all of his vices has been spent doing whatever his parents told him to do. They wanted him to study engineering, he studies engineering. They wanted him to go to school one place or another, that's where he goes to school at. So for him, it's just like, I've got this new life, I kind of want to live it. And so he makes the decision one day to just get up and leave and go to Papandu. Is that how we pronounce it?
I don't remember. I should have written it down. But it was northern Thailand. I remember that because we've seen a lot of boys live over there in southern Thailand a lot. And I think this was the first one I was like, oh, we went to northern Thailand this time. That's fun.
I'm going to call it PPD because PPD just is easier for, I know it's Papandao. It's basically the same name as Chief. And we don't know how to pronounce Chief's name. So it's just going to be hard, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, he goes to this small town as a volunteer teacher. And he doesn't know anything. Jon Snow, you know nothing. Like that first day of him in the classroom, I remember thinking, you're useless. Why the hell are you here? You knew you were coming. Did you bring nothing?
I cannot believe he literally walked into a teaching job and just was like, I guess I'll wing it. It's like you had time to prepare for this.
Right. Like he had a whole ass interview with the volunteer teacher guy. And you think that, also that the volunteer teaching people would prepare him as well. Like that they would have PPAs.
Like, hey, here's what this age range is gonna learn for this year. Here's what you should teach them, Yeah. And honestly, everything he taught them was like not ever, it was like kind of useful life skills, I guess, but like he never really taught them like math or literature or anything like that. He's like, you guys like airplanes? Here's an airplane. Let's make a paper airplane. And I'm like, are children at this age, like, is that what school's like at that age? Where they're just like not doing shit, but like drawing pictures and making paper airplanes? Like, what are we doing here?
I was so confused. I was confused, number one, that there weren't lesson plans. At the very minimum, there should have been a lesson plan book, a grade book that lets you know what strengths and weaknesses students have there. There should have been something with this volunteer organization to prepare these new teachers to do this. But also, I was thinking to myself, he has the diary. And at different points in the diary, we have information about the class. So Torfun wrote down like who all the kids were, what their personalities were like. She left a lot of documentation in her personal notes about this village and these people. And he still asked questions like, do you know numbers? Do you know letters? And is surprised by the answers. And I just have to wonder like, okay, were you just reading it like it was a novel and like skip the detail things? Like,
yeah, it's this show isn't full of the brightest bulbs, No, it's a little bit like y'all need to think a little bit before you speak and do things.
Yes, especially because there's one thing in particular that I could not get off my mind. So at one point he writes all the Thai alphabet letters on the board, and the student's like, you mixed up 2 letters, which I'm thinking, wow, that'd be like a teacher writing the ABCs on the board and mixing up two letters, like how are you a university student? But also he asked the kids if they know numbers, and they say yes they do, which is a plot point later on when one of the kids is standing with his dad to sell tea leaves, and he asks him, do you know what a kilo is? And the kid's like, no, I don't know numbers.
Okay, can we talk about that? Because that really bothered me, where they figured out that, okay, these guys have basically been hustling these farmers because these farmers just aren't educated enough to know, like, kind of like, I guess, like kilometer or kilograms or whatever.
Yeah, kilograms.
Or like the numbering. So they're basically giving away more tea leaves than what the people are, like, they think that they're selling 4 kilograms, but the people are taking like 5 to 6 kilograms. So basically they're being robbed. And I kind of thought after that, especially when we learned that Tian has an engineering career, I'm like, okay, he's gonna help teach these kids some math, like some basic math, and it just to help out a little bit in the village, like math that is completely applicable to their daily life. And it never happens. And I was like, why didn't we do that? Instead, he's like, let's make a paper airplane. And I'm like, these kids need some life skills.
That was one time where they addressed the scale thing. He brought in a scale and they measured the biggest kid in class. And then he made the kids pick the little kid and put a lot of weights on him to make him weigh the same as the biggest kid in class. And that's as close as we got to working these scales and learning these numbers.
Right. Which, by the way, why was one of the kids' personality trait just being the fat one?
I had problems with that as well. I'm like, okay, first the kid nearly drowns. So that's bad luck. But then, like, he's just, his whole personality is whenever nobody's looking, I eat all the food. And that's the personality, I eat all the food and I'm sleepy. And I'm like, is this kid a panda? Is that what we're trying to tell people? But also, like, I was thinking seriously, like, this kid might have sleep apnea. Maybe people need to take him to a doctor and figure out what's going on, because he's fallen asleep in class. He drowned in 2 inches of water in the river. Like, something's wrong.
It's a lot. I will say, I wish the show spent more time with the kids. Like, I think we moved past the kids too fast. And then it was like a couple episodes of limbo of the will they, won't they? And I'm like, no, we should have had more time with the kids and getting to know the kids better. Like, I was like, ooh, we're going to go School of Rock, that Poet Society in this show. I'm in it. And it kind of fizzled after a few episodes. And I was like, ugh. Like, okay, there's a scene where he's reading the diary. And he's like, and the diary kind of lists all the kids and like basic interests about them. I kind of wish that didn't happen. And instead, throughout the course of a few episodes, we had personal time with each kid where he learned something about them. And then he like forms a deeper connection with them that way, because he's not reading it, he's like seeing it firsthand for the first time.
Right. I do like the fact that through the kids, he starts to gain trust with the villagers. Because when he first came there, none of the villagers except for the chief wanted to talk to him. They're just like, get away from us. You're another stranger who's come here. It's probably leave in a couple of weeks. I don't need to waste my time getting to know you.
Yeah.
But slowly, by trying to figure out what the kids' lives are like, what they do when they're not in school, he starts to be introduced to the villagers and they get to know him. And I thought that it would have been really nice, like when he had conflicts with the villagers, that the kids would have been like, even though our parents don't want to talk to you, we want to talk to you. Especially the one little girl, Miju, who asked all the questions. When she asked him, what is death? I remember thinking, like, I would like to hear that conversation, even though as a person who's not this child's parent, you are very cautious about how much you want to say. But still, I would have appreciated to see what his response would have been, because these kids had a really big connection to Torfund. They ask about her all the time. And so I think it would have been really nice to have a moment where he could have talked with the kids about, you know, what it meant that Torfund wasn't going to come back, and they could have shared with him what Torfund meant to them. And it just would have been nice to have more interaction with the kids.
Agreed. Yeah, because we didn't really learn much about them besides like that first kind of initial rundown when he first gets to class and he's like flashing back to the notebook. It's kind of all we get.
Yeah, but I really did like the kids. I thought they hired really good kid actors. I was kind of choked up when he left the village and the kids were crying. I'm like, oh, babies.
Oh, I got really teared up then. It was really sweet. They handled that scene extremely well.
Yeah, so I like the kids in this. Okay, so now let's talk about Chief. So when Chief
what was his? I don't know. I wish there was more to him.
Okay, so I felt like we got a lot more of him towards the end, and I think they were definitely going for a sympathy character. That was kind of their aim with Chief. But like, I wanted to know one very distinct thing about Chief, and I realize that this is petty. It's none of my fucking business, probably, and why am I so focused on it? But there was a scene of a flashback between Chief and Torfund, where Torfund is getting ready to confess to Chief, and Chief's kind of like, hey, don't do that. It's not going to end the way you want it. And she's like, hold up, just give me a chance. And at that moment, I'm like, is Chief going to tell her that he's gay? Is that the reason why this is not going to work out?
Yes.
And so
they never told us.
They never told us. And don't get me wrong, it's not because I need Chief to say that he's gay, but there's one thing that remains unresolved that I feel like they danced around a lot, but they never clarified. Were Chief's feelings for Tian influenced by his feelings for Torfund? Because if we knew that Chief was gay, then we'll know, like, okay, he might have liked Torfund as a person, but it's not a transfer of romantic interest. And that's never clarified.
Right. Whereas like with Tian, we get like more verbal confirmation that he probably is gay, or at least this is first time really being attracted to a person.
Right. So that was something that I really wish that they had declared. It could have been little. He could have been like, I appreciate your feelings, but I'm just not into women, or I've never liked anybody. Even like he could have been ace for all we know. But I really wanted to know, only because they never really defined that, and they spent a lot of time saying, "Doesn't he remind you of Torfund? Doesn't he remind you of Torfund?" And it makes it to where you wonder, like, does Chief really like Chen, or does he like Torfund? And this is bringing back that memory.
And that kind of bothers me, just because like it happens so much in Boys Love, especially GMMTV. They're like the main perpetrator of like, oh, I'm not gay, I'm just into this person. And like, I think in like a worldly, like if the world was perfect, I would kind of like that, like love whoever you want, no labels, things like that. But that's not how the world works. And I feel like as a gay person, constantly seeing gay ships be like, oh, I'm no homo, I just like this one, it makes me uncomfortable. Like I kind of want better for queer characters. So the fact that that wasn't resolved, oh my God, did I just have a stroke?
No, you're fine.
I was like, all right, we could have resolved that. Might have been a little bit nicer. But at least with Tian, we like got some confirmation that no, his feelings weren't because of Torfund. He just really liked Chief. And I'm like, cool. At least on one side, it's influenced by totally his own manifest destiny.
Right. And I also really appreciated that there was a scene towards the end where Chief is looking through Torfund's diary, and we see a lot of the things that Tian did were written in the diary. And I was so glad that that was there, because I thought they were going to make it some type of like metaphysical link, like because he has Torfund's heart, he's got Torfund's memories, and he's doing the things that Torfund did. Because like they had moments where they're like, oh, doesn't he kind of look like Torfund? Oh, he puts his arm out the window like Torfund did. And I'm like, first of all, I do that. And I related to this. Who doesn't put their arm out the window when it's a breeze? So like, I was glad that they put like the bicolored vegetables was written down, the green giant thing was written down. A lot of these things were written down, so he operated with prior knowledge. And I thought that was important, because then it really reinforced that any feelings that Tian had were not leftover Torfund feelings, they were his own. But we just didn't get that on the flip side.
Also, him operating of kind of knowing who Chief was a little bit beforehand evens out their playing field a bit once we get to the twist.
Right. So let's go ahead and talk about the main conflict of the show in terms of exterior to the relationship. Tian happens to be in a village where the people there are very rural. Like they are farmers, they work the land, and they're in a place where there's no running water, there's not reliable electricity. And the way that they make their money is through tea harvesting. And Basin, one day we've got to go to Thailand. We've got to go to Thailand.
Damn, the way we're gonna have such a good time in Thailand one day. And we'll be going to the market being like, this drink was in a boy's love and this drink was in a boy's love.
Don't get me in a convenience store because I will have an arm full of these things we're seeing on Boys Love.
Yeah, I'll be like, we got some pink milk. We have the soap that they used in this one.
The mixed snacks, all of it. But like the hills are gorgeous. Those tea fields were so beautiful.
Breathtakingly beautiful. It was you know what it reminded me of? Small tangent. There's a movie that if you guys really like the visuals and kind of like general aesthetic and theming of this show, there's a Studio Ghibli film called Only Yesterday. It came out in the 90s, directed by Isao Takahata. It is one of my all-time favorite movies. And it's about a girl who she's like, she grew up in like the city. And so she's kind of like in mid to late 20s. And she's kind of like, I don't know if the city life's for me. So she goes on like her vacation, she goes to a farm and she just goes to like rural Japan and she helps pick like chrysanthemum to make like red dye and like lipstick and stuff. And it's like rolling hills and it's very gorgeous and it's like an agricultural life. And it's about her like falling in love with that and falling in love with a man there. It's a really wonderful film. And this show really reminded me of that, especially the scenes where like they're farming and stuff and they would show like the rolling hills. It was very that, like, so good. But yes, so beautiful. We have to go to Thailand. Oh my God.
Right. I specifically want to go to Bangkok, but I really want to see some of this kind of rural foresty area because it is very beautiful. But yeah, we're seeing these people living in this very kind of close to the land life. And because of that, and also their proximity to anything that's urban or town or anything like that, there's a lot that they haven't had. And one thing that I think is the reason why they were so able to be taken advantage of by Mr. Sakta is that they haven't had reliable teachers. On the ride to this town, Yod is like, yeah, we have a lot of rich kids like you that come here. They spend like a week here and they go home. They spend a couple days here. The teacher that was here before you has been here the longest. Torfund was only in the village for 3 months.
Yeah, she was like the only one to actually complete like her initial like employment period.
Yeah. Right. And I'm just like, okay, so you can imagine a place where there's been no reliable education. The only teacher that lasted for even a length of time was 3 months. Like, these are people who are poorly educated, which begs the question, how did Longtae get into university? Where did he get his education?
I'm okay with not questioning it purely because I think it was a really good narrative choice to have someone that was Tian's age that had similar interests and had also experienced city life.
I agree. I think he's a great character, but I was just like, these kids they can barely read and write. How did you get into university?
Especially with people like fucking Tian teaching them how to fold paper airplanes. Like, my God, I'm not over the paper airplane thing. He really thought that he like the first day of class, he's like, I want to go on a field trip. And he takes them, he's like, this is yellow. And I'm like, okay.
Black, green, white. They're like, oh, come on. Like, is this a kindergarten class?
Yeah. I'd be like, okay. And
yeah.
Like if my Spanish teacher did that in high school, I'd be like, what are we doing here? Can I go?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was the educational standards are low. And so because these people haven't had reliable education and probably had just started getting volunteers not that long ago, you have a lot of adults who are illiterate. You have not only them being illiterate, but you also have a culture that's because they're very close to the land, they have a different spiritual belief. Because it said early on that some of them are native and then some of them are Thai, but everybody speaks Thai. So you have these kind of native spiritual beliefs about the land that factor really heavy into the way these people live. So like Kale, when he drowns, after the doctor has treated him, the local priest treats him as well to get the bad spirit with him. So because of that, they haven't really questioned whether or not they're being treated equitably. They haven't really questioned whether or not they can talk up for themselves, because they've lived a life that they've always lived.
Right.
So
it was I like that this show was set there, just because I feel like GMMTV knows that a lot of their audience is international, and I feel like this really introduced a new side of like Thai culture that international fans wouldn't really know about.
Oh, absolutely. I would know nothing about rural Thailand at all. I would know nothing about it. But because they are kind of just living this life they've always lived, and not a lot of exposure to other things, not a lot of educational opportunities, Mr. Sakta is kind of like, I don't want to say the godfather, but he's kind of like the main overlord of this area. Like, he is the person that is responsible for the livelihood of all of the people in this village. If he chooses to buy their tea gets bought. If he doesn't want to buy their tea, he can make it to where no one around them will buy their tea. And because of that, they've just never really questioned whether or not they're being taken advantage of. They might have known on some level, but not really. So while Tian is trying to get closer to the children and closer to the villagers and integrate himself with the community, he notices that they're getting their tea weighed, and that the guy is saying 4 kilograms, but it says very clearly on the scale 5.4. And he gets into this argument with the tea seller, which personally, I think Tian could have handled it very differently. That would not have been the way I would have wanted to handle it. Instead, I would have taught the villagers how to read and maybe get them to say, you know, it says whatever, and maybe work it out that way, but I digress. Anyway, he gets into this confrontation with Mr. Sakta's men. And that confrontation plays a big role into like the main conflict outside of the relationship for this show, because Mr. Sakta is not one to be questioned. He's been running this place his whole life. He actually is the person who funds the Forest Service, which is insane. The people who are supposed to protect the forest from poachers are being employed by the guy who is the poachers. So because of that, Mr. Sakta realizes that Tian is a very different kind of person. He's shaking up the system. And rather than trying to punish Tian personally, since he realizes that Tian doesn't care if you beat him up, whatever, threaten him, he decides to take his anger out on the village. And he does it in a couple of very overt ways, and then one very insidious way. So overtly, he decides not to buy their tea, and to punish them is like, oh, I'll buy your tea at half price, which would be ruin for these people, because even if they did it for a month, that would be catastrophic. But if they were to agree to this for the rest of their lives, there would be no escaping poverty at that point. So that's one thing he does. Then he goes to everybody around them and makes them not want to buy their tea. Then Tian comes up with the idea of making tea sachets that you could sell to tourist spots. And all the villagers are like, yes, finally, something we could do. And he burns down the schoolhouse where they're keeping the tea sachets. And so
almost kills Tian, who has had about 7 near-death experiences at this point in the show.
Tian, can I just talk to you for a minute? I realize that you're a sentimental person and you're very emotional. Don't run in no fucking burning building to rescue a paper kite. Have that man make you another one. Because he didn't even run in there to save the tea sachets. He ran in there to save the kite that she
paper
made him.
Kite. I can't. So, his mom's right. The boy needs supervision.
That's why you got a babysitter, because
Yeah.
you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going all out to scam these villagers, but then he does something that is so smart and so cruel. He takes two people who are villagers, who live in the village, have connections to the community, and he makes them make up this story about ghosts following them home from Ghost Hill on the way to the cliff. And Ghost Hill is this place that the community, because of their ties to the land and their spirituality, they don't go on Ghost Hill because they believe it'll bring bad spirits into the village. So these people are like, oh, we accidentally went up there and now these spirits won't leave them alone and we're so scared and oh my gosh, nobody go up there. It's so horrible. They're actually working with Mr. Sakta, and they are poaching animals, and they are hiding their poached hides on Ghost Hill.
Yeah.
And it's just like the way that this man has managed to manipulate every facet of these people's lives. It's so sad and it's so scary and it's so real, because that is the way it is.
You know, it was also a good twist too, was one of the people that they sold the pouches to when they're going around was this like kind of older man who was like, oh, you know, I really want to help these people. I'm going to buy a lot and here's some extra snacks for the road, right? That ended up being Mr. Sakta.
Yeah.
And being like, him? Okay.
Yeah, he's fucking evil. He's fucking evil. But I mean, Chief, you can see on Chief's face, he's like, I don't trust this motherfucker. But yeah, like he, in every way, he controls everything about them. And it's such a real thing, because in communities where there's not a lot of educational opportunities and there's not a lot of job opportunities outside of one main industry, this is what happens. This is what happened in America with sharecroppers, where people would rent the land from the person who owns the land, and they would rent the seeds to be able to plant the crops. And then there would be a general store where they could buy things on credit, and they would have to pay that back once the harvest was done. But the landlord set the price for the harvest. So these people stayed in perpetual cycles of servitude, actually, because they had no other place to make their money. So I thought it was really interesting the way they show that that kind of system exists in a lot of these places, and that it's really hard to get away from it.
Right.
So Tian and Longtae discover this poaching operation on Ghost Hill. And when they do, Tian does the thing that I yelled at somebody at Manor of Death about. And when I saw it in this show, I was so fucking pissed that I actually had to set my phone down. I was like, okay, you know what? I have to breathe. He takes a picture of nefarious doings and leaves a fucking flash on the phone. You're in the dark, in the middle of nowhere. Do you not think people are going to notice the flash on your phone going off?
It's a double-edged sword, because there'd be no picture without a flash. At that time at night, you couldn't take a photo without a flash and it would show.
I don't know, like some phones have like night vision options available, and there was some light where they were, but I'm just like, you're caught. If you would have done a better job of just seeing what they were doing, leaving, calling Chief, and having Chief show up. That would have been the smart thing to do. But instead, they take the picture, and all of a sudden, they are wanted by men who have proven that they will stop at nothing to get what they want, including killing a bitch. And so they're running through the woods. Thank God Longtae escapes. But Tian gets captured. And I thought Tian kind of being like, do you know who my dad is? I'm like, you know, in that situation, I probably would have pulled that card too. But then the guy's like, your dad's not gonna know what happened to you, because I'm gonna disappear you, basically. Like, yeah. Sometimes nepotism only goes so far. So when they were getting ready to kill him, I'm like, if this is how this show ends, like, I know we have a couple more episodes, but if this is how this show ends, I'm going to be so angry. All of a sudden, shots ring out, and it is a gun fight. And I was really happy about that. I was actually very happy that it was a shootout, because after watching Manor of Death and people knock guns out of folks' hands so they can fist fight them, I'm like, yes, use your fucking guns. Use your fucking guns. But this would not be a drama if we did not have one of our main characters be in danger of losing their life by getting shot in the gunfire.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why this makes me mad. I get the fact that they didn't want to imply that this was a military unit, even though they have on camouflage and they wear like utility belts and stuff like this. They didn't want to make it seem like they were military. However, if you're going into a situation where you think there will be a gunfight, why aren't you wearing bulletproof vests?
You didn't have any? Which is dumb, because they weren't wearing any at the beginning either when they were doing like their hiding behind twigs, which by the way, drove me fucking crazy that this entire forest is made out of twigs and they're like trying to habitate these trees that are like this big wide. And you're like, no, you're a man in a black outfit standing behind a twig. I can see you.
Yeah, and they've got guns that are like 2 feet long. Like these are the biggest guns that we've ever seen on a GMMTV show. And yet and still, no bulletproof vests.
The gun he pulls out in the last scene, I was like, what are we doing, GMMTV?
Like, why doesn't he
got
have
like a whole rifle ready to go?
Yeah. You'd think that he was watching someone commit a crime in the moment, the way he had his gun up. But anyway, yeah. I just like, if you know you're going against people who you know have guns and aren't afraid to use them, why don't you have on tactical gear? You should have on a helmet. You should have on a bulletproof vest. You should have the things you need. And obviously somebody paid for these fucking huge ass guns. So like there was no budget to buy the bulletproof vest. Because if that's the case, get the small gun, buy the bulletproof vest.
Right.
Get the semi-automatic handgun.
Get a pistol and a vest.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that after this shootout, Mr. Sakta was killed, or maybe enough happened to where there was evidence for the state to come and get Mr. Sakta so these people could get back on track. But that's probably the only loose end from this show that I feel like they didn't adequately go into. Is like, what were the consequences? Was Mr. Sakta murdered? Were the people who were in the shootout arrested? Were they able to break down this whole criminal conspiracy? Like, what was the outcome of this besides our main character getting shot? But yeah. I was glad that this was another plot point. One, because it makes the story more interesting, because this story does land very much into will they won't they territory for the most of the runtime, but also because this represented a situation that was greater than what Tien could fix with his resources.
Right.
And I really liked that. Because he was gonna like get money from his dad to like pay all the people in town, but that can only last for so long.
Right.
So I was glad that they presented something that it would take more than just the rich kid came in and fixed it all for us thing.
Yes. That was a good plot point.
Yeah. All right. So now it's time to talk about the relationship twists and turns between Tien and Chief.
The last 2 episodes were super annoying. Honestly, I spent like episodes 9 and 10, I just sat there rolling my eyes for most of it. Like we didn't need to do all of this, GMMTV. It could have been, he was shot. Oh my God, the village is saved and we're together now. And I would have been like, okay. But they put in a twist that's like, oh, apparently Tian's dad knew where he was the whole time and had talked to Chief and had Chief like kind of look out for him. And so then they have that whole like stupid argument that they do in these types of situations where it's like, did you even like me? Or was it all fake? And you're like, oh, okay, of course it's not fake, but here we go. So they do like 2 episodes of like them being petty, and like meanwhile Chief's like a whole ass like 30-year-old man who just like can't get his shit together for some reason. And you're like, please, you're 30. Like, this is insane. Just use your words. And then they have the audacity to have Tien go, I need you to apologize for Chief for hurting his feelings. And it's like, Chief said a bunch of like things like, I don't want you here. You need to leave. you know, you don't like he was kind of following the dad's orders to try to get Tian to go home, but he did it in like a crude way. And then they made Tian go apologize to him because the doctor was like, you just don't understand, you know, he's really hurting too. And it's like, no, Chief was being an asshole. He deserves an apology from Chief.
Right. Like, okay, I get that Chief is one of those people that maybe because of his military background, he's like, do as I say, don't question an order.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, you can't order somebody into being the person that you want them to be. And with somebody with Tian's background, especially, who's so used to people telling him what he's going to do, how he's going to live his life, what his future is going to look like, that's absolutely the wrong kind of communication to have with him, because it makes him feel like you're not seeing me. You're not listening to me. You don't care about me. All you care about is what you want. And so I really felt like, yeah, this is gonna be a big problem in having a relationship, because you can't manipulate somebody or tell somebody how to live their life and think that you know what's best for them. You have to be an equitable partner. You have to talk to them about what it is you want, why you want these things, if it's something that they want too, instead of assuming that you know what's best for them. And maybe he assumes that he knows what's best because he's 10 years older than Tian, but you don't. You know, age, while it is important and life experience is, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know what this kid wants, because he's lived a completely different life from you.
Right.
So go ahead.
It wasn't great. I didn't like that plot point as much. I thought it could have been stronger. I also loved that when Tian did go to be like, I guess I'll apologize, which you didn't have to do. They're like, oh, he's so disheveled, like he's not eating, it's bad. And then he walks in on Chief, and Chief just has like a Sharpie beard, and you're like, great.
That beard was ridiculous. It's like they took
what kid on set?
And they cut little pieces of it, and then they glued a beard on his face and just slapped the weave hair on the glue.
Listen, I watched a lot of bad beards yesterday. Literally, I watched a clip of SNL, and Elon Musk just had this terrible fake beard too. And I'm like, this is a lot, guys. Come on, y'all.
Oh man. But yeah, like he did look sad though. Like they did a good job with the makeup around his eyes. It made it look he'd been crying the whole time. But yeah, that beard.
The actor couldn't actually do that, so they needed the makeup help.
You know,
the makeup came through a few times, actually. They only showed it once because I'm sure it took forever to do. But when they showed the scar on his chest, I thought it looked really good.
Yes, I actually liked the makeup a lot. The only complaint I had about the makeup was the fact that you had this kid who's a rich kid going into a rural setting, and they still kept him in flawless, poreless foundation. And I remember thinking, like, there's one scene where Chief pulls up Tian's arm and is like, what are all these red marks? Like, oh, it's mosquitoes. And I was thinking to myself, you know, this is a time when y'all could have really gone very light on the actor's makeup. And if he has any little blemishes or bumps or anything like that, you could show it, because he's in a situation where he's getting bit by mosquitoes and it's rural.
Right. I think they should have made the makeup just more over the top flawless at the beginning, and then it gets real dark and then it gets better as he gets more in tune with the villagers and gets accustomed.
Yeah,
but it was just
story with the makeup.
It was very nice the whole time, which I guess I'm okay with. I'm not super bothered by it, but I was like, could be.
Well, there were a couple of times where I'm like, his skin is too matte. Like, if you're gonna go with flawless coverage, do dewy flawless coverage. That way, it looks more like skin, because it really does look like he's falling asleep in a full face of makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's being petty. But yeah, there's one big misunderstanding, and I don't know how Tian gets over it. The dad wants Tian to come home for New Year's, and the dad has the conversation with the chief about, hey, send my son home for New Year's to me, but you could convince him. And so he decides to like totally be an asshole to Tien to get Tien to want to leave the village and go home. And there's two things wrong with that. Number one, it's never a good idea to be dishonest with your partner in order to manipulate them into doing something. That's just a horrible idea because it wears away their trust in you.
Mm-hmm.
But number two, you're not the only person in this village that he cares about and might want to spend New Year's there for. He cares about his kids. He's friends with these villagers. He has this whole wish fulfillment thing that he wants to do for the new year. He's got things he wants to accomplish. And so you thinking that, well, if I'm just mean to him, then I can manipulate his caring for me and his feelings for me to get him to go home. Like that, you think a lot of yourself, friend.
Right. It just felt like they had come so far in their relationship. And then like the last few episodes, they're like, well, the big bad guy was taken down. So this emotional turmoil. Whereas I feel like that was not the right move. I think the right move was to really hone in on Tien as a character and how his kind of theming was learning to follow his heart and find out what makes him happy in life. And instead they decided to focus on like a bit more of like Chief being a dick to him and like sending him home and like their will they won't they. And I just thought it would have been a little bit better if he maybe went home because he was like, I like being here, but it's the only thing I've tried, you know? And I love you, but again, I don't know, maybe I should try something else. I need to find what makes me happy, you know?
Right. And I especially think with Tien, that's very important because, you know, Tien has this really very unfulfilling conversation with his dad. So Tien's in the hospital after the whole raid thing, and his dad comes in and is like, listen, son, it's time to go home. Your mama misses you. I know where you were the whole time. You'll never escape from the influence of my money and power. And Tien's like, that's the thing. Like, I know that you've done amazing things for me. I know that you're the reason why I have this heart, but I just want to live my life for a minute. I want to learn how to do things. I don't want to always be put in these situations that people have put me in and never know like what I'm capable of because I've never extended my hand. And so his dad kind of like, I guess that's what the young people like, but doesn't really listen to him. And even towards the end, never really listens.
I mean, I think that's just like a cultural difference though, because I mean, we've seen it a lot in a lot of these boys' loves, or we've come to learn that like, it definitely seems to be like the Asian in Asia, like the cultural sensibility is more about like how your actions affect your community and your family and not as individualistic as like American sensibilities are. Like we're a bit more like follow your personal goals and dreams here. Whereas in a lot of these shows, it's a bit more like, what's best for the family? What's best for the community at hand here?
I agree that definitely is, you know, what do they call it? The filial system is very important and, you know, that kind of thing. But also he tells his dad, like, I've never done anything. I've never made my own food. I don't wash my own clothes. And he was telling his dad about all these things that he's teaching these kids. But what he's really telling his dad, like, I learned how to do this and I'm able to show other people how to do this. I'm becoming more and more capable every day. And I want to explore this new capability that I found. And I wish that his dad could have seen that, because then maybe his dad could understand, like, maybe we have gone a little overboard in sheltering you. Maybe we've gone a little overboard in trying to fit you into the mold that we want. And then to turn around and have this person that you have a romantic crush on, that you're thinking, I want to be with you, and them also kind of count you out too and feel like you're somebody who needs to be told what to do and you need to be manipulated into doing things because you're just stubborn. Like, honestly, if I was Tien, I kind of probably would have not wanted to be with Chief after that. But you know, they have a bad relationship in that manner, that they just they haven't been, up until the very end, capable of being honest with each other, and honest in a timely manner too. Because like sometimes they'll be honest, but they'll wait till the very end to be honest. Like the whole Tor Fund, I murdered Tor Fund thing. I'm like, bro, tell the whole story. Quit trying to hide shit or trying to make things worse than they were. I get that you have survivor's guilt and it's valid, but like don't pile more on top of it. So it turns out that Torfun was run over by a car that was owned by Tian, but Tian wasn't driving the car. His friend Prem was driving the car. And so when he gets to the village, and this is also another thing, it wasn't all Tian's fault. Tian gets to the village and he finds out that none of the villagers know that Torfund is dead.
Yes. Why didn't they, like, was it Yad, the kid from Together,
and Chief all went to Torfund's funeral?
Yeah. And everyone's like, where's Torfund? And they're like, oh, we don't know. So it's on them for not telling the villagers beforehand. Like, because how would they know that the new teacher would be somehow connected to Torfund? They wouldn't know at all. Like, it was just a coincidence.
And also, like, it's hard. Tian probably wanted to be honest sooner. But he's got to tell people two things. He's got to tell them about the fact that he's got Torfund's heart and that he was tangentially involved in the reason why she died. But he also has to tell them that she died. And that's really a lot to put on his shoulders.
I think that's why they like did that, was to like make it a bit more dramatic, but it just didn't play out as well as I.
No, because they made it seem like, oh, you're a liar. Like at one point the villagers say, why did you lie to us and make us like you?
Which is unfair, because it's not like he
yeah,
I don't know,
it's unfair. But like, if he saw that even the people who he knows that Torfund is dead, not telling the villagers, and he's an outsider, and these are people who've lived amongst the villagers for years, like who is he to go in and be like, yeah, by the way, your favorite teacher is dead, somebody driving by a car killed her, and by the way, I've got her heart in my chest now. Like,
that's a lot of info, especially to say to young children.
Right. So I mean, I felt like, and also like Chief did not help by being like, hey, you got this notebook of hers, and how do you know her, and what's going on? First of all, the doctor, stay in your fucking lane. Why are you trying to play junior detective to find out if he's the killer? But also, like, if you were unsure about the timing, or you're like, I can see where this is connected, but I think there's something more, why wouldn't you wait until after you fully investigate the scenario before telling Chief, by the way, Tian is the one who killed Torfund? Because when Chief went to Torfund's funeral, he's like, I'll never forgive the person who killed her. That was foreshadowing. But like right after Tian has the whole speech to everybody about what happened, the doctor comes in like, oh, by the way, I was looking at the times, and there's no physical way that Tian could have been driving the car that killed Torfund, so he didn't actually kill her.
Right, which is why I thought it was shit that the doctor, I think it would have been much stronger narratively had Chief not really known anything was going on, like if the doctor hadn't said anything yet. And then when Tian was revealing all this information, Chief was there and also hearing it for the first time. And then the doctor would come in and be like, actually, I looked at the reports and that's not what happened.
Right. And so I don't know. I feel like it's hypocritical for you to be mad that you think he kept something from you when you kept something from villagers that you've lived with for years.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal. And also, like, Tian, you should not have said, I killed her. Like, the way you said it was like, I murdered her and now I've got her heart. You sound like a fucking, like you were stalking her in a bush and stabbed her and pulled her heart out. Like,
yeah, like fairy tale style.
Yeah, you know, it is mine. You know, like, come on, guys.
Yeah. He said, mirror, mirror on the wall, whose heart am I taking today?
Right. It's like, you could have said this in a much better way. You could have said, you know, like, the reason I came here is because I received a donated heart and I wanted to know who gave me this heart. And I found out it was this teacher. And through a series of unfortunate circumstances that, you know, I feel really bad about, I've got this heart, but I want you guys to know that my whole intent to come here was to return the love you gave her while she was alive. You could have done that instead of like, and I killed her and I took from her the life that she lived. Like, come on. Yeah. Why do you have to do it like you're a fucking serial killer?
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, so there's a lot that could have been a little bit smoother with that. But overall, I really liked the way that the show progressed the love affair. I liked the way that they incorporated their ads. There were a couple of ads that were like super odd. All of the mixed snack ads were ridiculous. But the soap ad was cute. And I like some of the other ads. The coffee ad was cute. But I like the way that this was paced. I like the way that it was shot. I like the conversation that Tien has with Tull, where he tells Tull that he thinks that he might be gay. And Tull tells him, like, do I have to tell you I like girls? And he's like, no. He's like, well, then why does it matter if you like boys? You like what you like, whatever. And so
yeah,
that
was a really cute conversation.
It was.
Yeah, I was so nervous. And Tull was like, and what? Like, go get some dick. Like, have fun. I also really liked that they never had, even though like Chief never really came out, all of the jokes that were like made about him liking Tien by like his friends and stuff, I like that they had those jokes, but the jokes were very like, they would have made extremely similar jokes or the same exact jokes if Tien was a girl. Like, they weren't jokes like, oh, you fucking fag. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. Sorry.
Wow.
Anyways.
Yeah. They were it was, and also like, it made me think about the fact that they mentioned like, this is a village where it's a mixture of cultures. And a lot of them are like native cultures. And it's been discussed about how the reason why transgendered people have been able to find a place in society in Thailand is because Thailand was never really conquered by a Western power. They worked with the West, but they were never like the colony of England or something like that. And so they didn't have the opportunity for Christianity to come in and break their population and make them have these, you know, anti-gay sentiments. And so for people who are used to having a spiritual connection with the land and are used to life from the earth, and that being the main do or die for how they exist, things like who you love, if you're gay or not, they're probably like, that doesn't matter. What about this harvest?
Yeah.
And so it seemed like even the people in the village were like, you know, we don't care, you know, we're just glad to have you. You seem like a nice guy and you've been helpful to us.
Yeah.
So I think that was nice. I like the way they handled that. But overall, I really like this show. I'm going to give the show a really high rating, considering that I still think there were a lot of things that could have been tightened up. I still want to give the show an 8.
I agree. I think the show is a solid 8. It's the best thing GMMTV has done in a really long time. Like, I feel like GMMTV really, really tried with this show. They tried to make something good. And I appreciate that. It didn't feel like they made it as a cash grab, kind of like how Together felt, and The Shipper, and Tonhon Chonleti. It felt like they saw I Told Sunset About You, and they were like, okay, we gotta step it up a bit. Right. So it makes me excited to see what they have coming up next. I'm more optimistic about GMMTV than I was in all of 2020, which is good, because I was not optimistic about GMMTV in 2020. Yeah. Together was pretty good. It started strong and got kind of weak towards the end. And then they did The Shipper and you're like, this was bad. And then they did the Together sequel and you're like, this was also not good. And then a Tonal Trinity and you're like, oh, this is just offensive. Like, y'all are just homophobic. Okay. They did this and it's like, okay, this one's nice.
Yeah. Also, like, justice for the actor who plays Long Tae. He was one of the leads in Tonhon Chonleti. And I love his face. I loved him in Together. I actually really liked him in Tonhon Chonleti. I felt bad for the fact that show was awful, but I thought he did a good job. And watching him in Tale of a Thousand Stars, I was like, when are y'all going to give him a second lead? Because he deserves. Because he's a really good actor.
Yeah. I liked him. I thought the guy who played Tien was good too. I think he's new to GMMTV. I think this is like his first show with them. But I really enjoyed him. I felt like he was what Off thinks he is. If that makes sense.
You mean Jay Park?
Yeah. Spaghetti swag, like, yeah. But like, he actually has charisma.
Speaking of GMMTV in general, I want to talk to you a little bit about the director for this show. So the director and also co-screenwriter for this show is a gentleman whose name I'm going to pronounce as Backoff, because it's Backaof, Backoff.
Mhm.
Anyway, I am really excited about this director. I never really paid any attention to him previously, but I was looking at his credits in my drama list, and he's got a lot going for him. He was a screenwriter on My Dear Loser, Edge of 17. He was a screenwriter for Gay OK Bangkok 2, which I really enjoyed. But also, he is the director of Tale of a Thousand Stars. He is going to be the director of Together the Movie, because they're doing that.
Maybe he'll do a good job.
But he was also the director for Still Together, which I know, but remember, we kind of changed our mind about Still Together because
we changed our mind because everything else sequel-wise was even more shit, but it still wasn't great.
But now I'm gonna really blow your mind. He was the director of Dark Blue Kiss.
Oh.
And he was the director of He's Coming to Me.
My favorite man.
And he is going to be the director of Bad Buddy, which is the new show that my fave is going to be in.
Is Ohm the lead?
Yes.
Is it a gay
it's the
show?
one where the two boys are neighbors and they have they're developing feelings for each other, but their families are rivals.
Sam, we're going to watch the shit out of the show. We're going to watch the shit out of the show.
So
when's it come out?
I don't know when it's coming out because right now it says no date on it, which I don't know. We'll see what happens.
They probably haven't even filmed it yet then.
Yeah, and he's also been a director for at least one episode of Our Sky. But yeah, I really, really like his style. I like the way that he does his stories. He's Coming to Me. I still say great show, weird ass premise, ghost sex mechanics. Still need to know an answer for.
You'll never get an answer.
I will never get an answer. I will never. Dark Blue Kiss, honestly, deserves way more credit in the boys' love circles than it gets.
It really does. That was a really, really good show. Every time I go back and think about it, I feel like I am more fond of it.
Yeah, so I feel like this show left a really good taste in our mouths as well. It feels like he's just getting better and better. And so
Agreed.
I am super hyped about Bad Buddy. I hope he's able to turn around the Together movie and make it something that works. But yeah, I really like it.
I have questions about the Together movie. Is it like a movie version? Is it like they're doing the same story that season 1 was, and this is just the movie version? Or is this like a continuation of the sequel, but it's like a movie?
I don't know. It's being called Together the Movie. And my hope, what I really want, is I want them to do a reverse Waterboy. So, I talked about how Waterboy the movie was made into a television show, which oddly enough, Chief played the son of the swim coach in the TV show for Waterboy. And that was that gift that I showed you of him kissing Mew, and it was just like the worst kiss ever.
Yeah, I mean, the kiss in Tale of a Thousand Stars was also nothing to brag about, but...
Yeah, but at least they didn't look like they were trying to lick each other's nostrils. Ugh, that kiss was... It was basically smashing faces. That's what that was, but I digress.
Yeah.
Anyway, what they did, they took a movie and they turned it into a television show. I'm hoping that what they'll do is they'll reshoot everything, but what they'll do is they'll kind of condense the storyline, pick out the best parts, avoid that whole you're trying to go out with this girl thing, and make a movie.
I think that could work. I was actually thinking while watching Tale of a Thousand Stars of how solid the 3-act structure breaks down and how that would make a really good movie. Like Tale of a Thousand Stars, you could condense into one really good movie, which is actually one of my complaints about Tale of a Thousand Stars, is it should have been 8 episodes max. 10 was too many.
And it's funny because a lot of people were upset because normally GMMTV shows are between 12 and 13 episodes. And they're like, oh, this didn't get enough episodes. But I think for what it had to offer, we would have really just been dragging it out if we gave ourselves more episodes, because GMMTV, for all of the gains that they're making in doing better with this show with storytelling, it's still a one kiss show. That's what it is. GMMTV is giving you one kiss.
And I think most of their shows recently have been deserving of like 8 episodes. Together should have been 8 episodes. We had like 4 episodes in the middle there where it was like nothing is happening.
Well, also Together, after they did the whole, oh, I think you're cheating on me aspect, I'm like, this ruins everything. This really and truly ruins it. I would say that the downhill slide for Together started when the brother arrived.
Yeah. I really hope he takes Together and finds the good parts and elevates them and discards the parts that don't make any sense.
Yes,
because
and don't bring any of that bullshit with Green and his boyfriend from Still Together into this movie. Don't do it. We don't want it.
No one wants that. And if it is like a continuation of the story, can we have Tynes, or is Type is the brother's name, right?
Yes.
Can we have him not be such a controlling asshole? Because I'm still saying divorce for, you know, being like, you can't eat that because we're all on diets, and then getting up in the middle of the night and making ramen.
Some things. Okay, well, you know what? Since we're here, we had promised people a while back that we were going to do the GMMTV conversation. Let's do it now.
Okay.
So Mason and I were not looking forward to doing this review, as we said in the beginning, because GMMTV has really left a sour taste in our mouth. And it's been a lot of things. It's been from this whole, like, let's be gay, but not too gay. It's been the way that they've utilized fan service to get fans invested into properties that are super weak and really are just used to push product, i.e. all of the advertising and Still Together. But the homophobia at GMMTV really is breathtaking. It's
straight up offensive. And I feel like the people that defend GMMTV are often straight girls that are just, they get exactly what they want. They get straight guys in gay roles that they can fetishize. And that's it. And they can go, oh, how cute. And then I feel like there's like I feel like I've seen some gay men defend GMMTV, and it's always like, don't you want better for yourself though? Like, I'm not saying you can't like these shows, but don't you want better for you? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. I refuse to watch Don't Home Chonleti, which is a shame because I really, really loved Dark Blue Kiss, and that had Plod, and he was playing the main love interest in Don't Home Chonleti, and I was like, oh my God, I love this guy. I can't wait to see him. And then Sam was like, Sam would give me like episode rundowns each week, and I was like, this is getting crazy, and not in a good way.
I mean, towards the end of that show, you have the dad saying to these 2 boys who are friends of his son that he's known forever, they're in a relationship. He's like, I'm sorry, and no offense to you, but I don't want your gay to rub off on my son. He says that flat out in the show, in the last episode of the show, mind you. And it's just one of those things where it's like, this is where we are. At the very last episode, we have no growth at all. This is where we are. The main character spends the entire show trying to de-sissify his best friend who he has feelings for. And it's just like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, seriously, what the hell are we doing here? You know, and you have LGBT people on your staff. You've got Jenny, who's a huge part of GMMTV. And you're basically telling her your community is basically, you know, a comic point. It's basically, you know, slapstick. It's not to be taken seriously.
Right. It's such a shame. It's such a shame too, because it's the sissies, it's the faggy ones, it's the queens that get shit done. They're the ones that gave us pride, you know?
Because they don't have any choice. That's the thing. The guys who are able to pass this straight and can keep it on the down low and can give off the appearance that they're not like that, they always have the option of turning it off in society. They always have the option of not letting people know. But there's some people that's just who they are. Their feminine aspects, their masculine aspects, that's just who they are. And they can't hide it. And they want to be in a world where they don't have to hide it, where they don't have to be punished for the fact that they are just who they are.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I am one of those people. I look very gay. I sound very gay. I open my mouth and you're like, ooh, a queen. Like, it's just, I can't change my voice. I'm not straight passing at all. And it makes it comfortable when people make fun of like the super gay ones, because I'm like, I can't change my voice. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Nothing I can do.
It's your voice, it's your mannerisms, it's what you talk about, it's how you talk about things, it's inflection, it's all of these things, but they're you. And I'm not asked to change that for me, so why do you have to change that for you? Why do you have to make yourself less to make other people feel more?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm being made fun of in a lot of GMMTV shows. And it's to a point where it's like, I feel like this, we talked about before, like, what's something that is gay but feels homophobic? And that's GMMTV. Like 100%. I mean,
if we run down the properties, there's always something wrong. Let's take He's Coming to Me. He's Coming to Me, which I really like that show. But the romantic relationship, the gay relationship, is between a boy and a fucking ghost. And a ghost that used to date his mother.
Yes.
So he's not really gay. I mean, what kind of sex is he having with this ghost? Like, again, ghost sex mechanics. This is why it counts. But, you know, it's almost like you're kind of gay, but not really, because you're not actually dating a man. You're dating an apparition.
Right. Like if Singto's character is bottoming, like, where does it go? You know? Like, does he need to go to the bathroom afterwards? Does he need to clean up?
So see, is it really gay? Is it really gay? You know, and then
I mean, yeah, because you are attracted to a man. I would say it's gay. Those are homoerotic feelings for sure.
Because, like, okay, it's almost like sometimes straight people are like, I'm okay with gay as long as you can't act on it, or as long as you fit straight parameters. The main agreement with Tonon Chonlathy with the dad never fully accepts the fact that his son is gay. He just gets over it because his son's like, we have a friend who will carry babies for us so we can continue on the family name. Right. That's the big kind of like, this is going to make everything go away. Boo. And again, it's like, if you can fit into my heteronormative expectations, then I can accept you. I need grandkids. Oh, you can bring me grandkids? Okay, well, then maybe the gay thing's not so bad. Which, look out of here. Because, like, if the show makes them have babies while they're still in college, basically.
Right.
Which is fucking ridiculous. We can go down the list. Dark Blue Kiss. Dark Blue Kiss is a really fun show, but we have one kid who's so in the closet because his dad is so oppressive that he's willing to let people think that he was raped by someone and ruin that person's entire career, livelihood, their life, basically, because he's so deep in the closet because he's not understood. And does his storyline get resolved? No. After it comes out that his son lied, what do you think happened when him and his son left?
We don't know. Probably got his ass beat.
Yeah. So, you know, great. Happy endings.
Yeah.
You know, it's awful. It's awful that it's like that. And so for every really supportive dad and mom from Dark Blue Kiss, you've got the monster parents hiding out in the background, waiting to beat their kids into submission, you know, right. And it keeps going. Even in, gosh, we can go all the way back to, what's the name of the show with Singto and Christ?
Sodas, fucking homophobic ass Singto, or Christ, homophobic.
Yes. Singto's gay. I'm saying it's canon. Singto's gay.
Maybe, but Christ is just like a homophobe, like in real life.
Christ is absolutely a homophobe, but Singto be getting it in. He told GMMTV, don't put me in a show unless I get to be gay. So I respect that, Singto. Love you. But Christ, when you look at the relationship in Sodas, even though I love that show, in the first Sodas, he's so fucking mean all the time.
Super mean.
All the time. And even in the second season, they're fucking living together practically. And he's still fucking mean all the time. Yeah. And it's just like, how do you live? How is this romance? How is this affection?
It's bad. Like, theory of love, also problematic. Off's character was a huge asshole.
To the point that he knew his friend was in love with him. And decides because he's not responding to my flirting the way that other girls do, I'm just gonna fuck him up so he'll leave me alone. Yeah.
I really, really hope that Tale of a Thousand Stars is GMMTV turning over a new leaf. Because even though we liked the show, that ice is still thin.
Oh, it's absolutely. This is probation. This is probation. Because it's also about, besides just the blatant homophobia and not taking gay people seriously, it's also about the fact that this is a moneymaker. And because this is a moneymaker, you depend on audiences to buy products. You depend on audiences to watch these things. What messages are you sending to these people? You have young women who feel safe watching BL. And I'll tell you why. You have a lot of young women who have little to no sexual experience, or maybe they're not living a life where they're sexually active. And it's a way for them to safely participate in sexuality without having any real stakes. So they don't have to compare themselves to other women in order to have sexual thoughts about men. And so a lot of...
I live next to a choir station, so that's on me.
I thought that was... I'm like, who's out here screaming? But you have a lot of women who are trying to approach sexuality in a way that feels safe to them. Even some women who are actually bisexual or lesbian, and they for them to indulge in men in a safe way because there's not another woman involved. And so they're developing their own sexuality through these properties. They're working on their own sexuality through these properties. And you're basically telling them gay is not real. It's just a cute thing that people do sometimes. It's a freak occurrence. They're not a real part of our society. And the problems that you have with being a heterosexual woman or a gay woman, a pan woman, they don't have those kinds of problems. Because being gay is just, it's faultless, it's fine. There's no friction at all. Or it does happen that sometimes people are homophobic, but then again, these people aren't really gay because they only like this one man. They've never liked any other man, and they'll never really like another man. So whatever. And it makes it to where they can go out into society and they don't feel the need to confront their own implicit bias. Because these shows don't demand it from them. So you can be like, I have a gay friend, or I watch gay media, so I must be woke, I must be an ally. But if you find yourself in situations saying, but this is different. Yeah, they're gay, but only gay for each other. Then you're not really an ally, and you don't really understand, and you're not really learning anything from this. So outside of just the general attitude that GMMTV has about gay culture and what's acceptable to portray on TV, it's the message that they're sending to people around the world about what's acceptable when it comes to being gay. And it's not acceptable. Yeah. You know, people really do get hurt in a way that I don't even think that is understood when it comes to media. And it's because from the time that you're like old enough to understand what the blinking lights on the television are, media is a part of your life. And kids learn how to read and how to do numbers and how to sing songs from the radio, from the TV, from the cell phone, from the iPad. Media is constantly a part of who we are. And a lot of our personalities are based on the media we consume. You know, if you're talking to Mason, you're like, I don't like Studio Ghibli. He's going to make a judgment about who you are as a person.
I mean, I'll be like, I think I'd just be like, okay, give me a reason why. Because I was watching a very popular anime YouTuber, and he was like, I don't like any Studio Ghibli film. And I'm like, I can't believe you love anime and hate Studio Ghibli, like, I need an explanation now.
See?
Thank you.
But a judgment is made, like, who hurt you? You know? But because media is such a big part of our lives, and it does so much in shaping the people we are, and it helps us to translate and also get into communities with other people. That's why it matters. So when people say, well, it's just fictional characters, why are you so annoyed by this? It's just...
Fiction has real world implications. That's why we talk about fiction. That's why fiction is still made, because it has real world implications. And a lot of fiction is reflective of the time. That's why if you look at, like, if you watch any like old story that gets adapted, like you could look at any of the Little Women and see how it was adapted specifically to fit the current themes and morals of the time period that it was adapted in. The very first Little Women movie is very different than the one that Greta Gerwig did a few years ago, because it's just a different time.
Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why it matters when we say these portrayals are hurtful, or these portrayals aren't accurate. It's not about us getting our panties in a wad because we don't understand fictional relationships. It's about the fact that it influences so much past the point of just watching the show. For a lot of people, the gay relationships they'll see on GMMTV are the only gay relationships they'll ever see. And just to bring it home even further, as a Black person, my experience as an American Black person is a vastly unique experience on the face of planet Earth. And there's a lot of cultures that have no Black people. They learn about Black people through media. And when movies were going out that were showing Black people as criminals and vandals and killers and all the bad, when we would go to other countries, they're like, well, I've seen media that shows that your people are bad people. And it's through Black Panther and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and a lot of these other properties that cast us in a different light that the world is getting to know us differently. So yeah, it fucking matters. And if it matters for me as a middle-aged Black lady, then it matters for the 14, 15, 16-year-old gay boy who's looking to see romance that looks like him and doesn't want to be chastised or made to feel like his life is a joke.
Right.
So GMMTV, that is what we've been sitting on. And that's the reason why we didn't look forward to doing this review at first, because we were prepared for more bullshit. We were really like, okay, so we'll be having the funeral on Sunday.
Yeah. we're in Black, we got a veil. Here lies our respect for GMMTV.
It was getting to that point for real. And I'm glad you pulled it back. I hope that you start doing well. I think there are a few shows airing now with GMMTV that I don't really know. I think Fish in the Sky is one of them, maybe?
Something like that is like out right now.
So, I mean, there's properties that we'll be taking a look at, and we hope that you continue on this best behavior streak, but you've got to be consistent, because you're still on probation. Straight up, you're still on probation, and we're not going to accept the slander because it's not worth it, especially when it takes fucking hours to get through these shows. Do you think I have that kind of time to waste?
Yeah.
Even watching it on double speed, it was still hours of my weekend.
Right.
So that is the rant.
Well, good rant. I don't have a manga of the week. Honestly, I forgot to prepare one. I haven't had to prepare one in a month.
That's okay. I've got 2 Instagrams of the week. First, we have the Instagram for Earth, who played Chief, and his Instagram is TheEarthe. So it's the ear the.
Great.
And he's got 1.5 million followers on Instagram. So if you type it wrong, look at how many followers there are and you'll know to look again. But that's his Instagram. And then the guy who played Tien, his name is Nix, and he's a veterinary student in college. Did you know that? Isn't that cute?
Oh, good for him.
Yeah. And his Instagram is MIXXIW. And he's got 1.1 million followers, which is really surprising because Earth has been with GMMTV for a really long time. So 1.5 is not, it's not strange, but this kid's got 1.1 million and this is his first major property. So good on you.
It's because he's super good looking.
He's super good looking, but also like, I have to say, they picked the right guy to play Tien because he's subtle without being dead faced. Like that is one of the things. Sometimes people play subtle, so subtle that you don't read any emotion on their face.
Right.
And he's good about being subtle, but yet still in the human realm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If anybody's watched Oxygen, you know what I mean too subtle. And even though Mason doesn't have a manga of the day, I've got to tell you about a manga of the week that I will be talking about in the future. I just bought Dick Fight Island. And so Dick Fight Island is a manga, I guess.
Yep.
About combatants on an island who wear elaborate shields over their penises. And I can only assume it is to spear each other to death using the thrust of their hips. I don't know. I haven't read it. It's going to be coming to me on the 11th. And so the next time we get together, I will be talking about Dick Fight Island. But yeah,
awesome.
I have ordered it and I cannot wait because it looks incredible. There's this one picture on Twitter of like 12 different people lined up and they've all got different size dick shields and it is incredible. It is really incredible. It's another manga that I might start reading just because I saw where Miles J posted it on Twitter. It's a manga called Jackass. And
I've talked about it on this channel before. I really love Jackass. It's one of my all-time favorite mangas that I've read. There's only one volume and it pains me greatly because it was so good. So good.
Well, there you go. So I might be reading that, but Dick Fight Island is coming, you guys. So we'll be talking about that. And you might be interested to know what the next show is we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely Rider.
Yep.
We are keen on watching Lovely Rider because it is from the directing team of the first season of, My
Engineer?
No.
So does
gosh, the one that the sequel was absolute crap and we didn't want to review it.
Love by Chance.
No. We ended up reviewing it. Thank you.
Okay.
The directors of season 1 of Fahrenheit did Lovely Rider. The premise of Lovely Rider is about a boys' love writer turning their adaptation into a show and all the behind-the-scenes shenanigans. And if you know anything about the behind-the-scenes shenanigans of Fahrenheit, cannot wait to hear about the juicy gossip because they fired the original directors, pretty much fired almost the entire team from Fahrenheit season 1 and went into Fahrenheit season 2 with brand new people who must have never done anything cinema-wise before. Ever. And just fucked that show all the way up. It was ridiculous. Yeah.
She picked some people off the street and said, make me the show.
Yes, and I still am mad for Fahrenheit because I feel like they deserve better. I don't know what her fucking deal is, but she hates one of the leads.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very obvious who it is she hates because of the presence he had on screen and the way that she wrote his character.
Mm-hmm.
It is very clear that someone didn't do something she wanted them to do. And because of that, she punished him on screen and gave us one of the worst viewing experiences we could have ever had. And it's not even the only one in the same fucking year, because Love by Chance season 2 was an absolute catastrophe.
Catastrophe. I cannot believe how spectacularly that failed.
I mean, it's just, could you imagine if somebody was to open their wallet to you and they had like a American Express Black card and they had like a platinum Visa and they're like, I'm going to give you this card. I want you to go in the mall and I want you to buy everything you want and you've got 25 minutes to do so. And you come out of the mall with a corn dog and an orange Julius. That's
Man, Love by Chance 2 was like season 8 of Game of Thrones level of series wreckage, where it's like, this just ruined everything for everybody involved. No one won. This was a spectacular fail of a popular show.
Literally let the world burn. Literally let the world burn. And so like we've already had the discussion about how fucking problematic Mame is, so won't go into that right now. But because of that, I expect some gems to come from Lovely Writer because they don't have anything to lose anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. So I guess that's that. Ooh, we will be doing a special video soon. We haven't figured out all the details, so I'm going to be super vague. But we passed our 1-year anniversary of doing Busy Thinking About Boys Love back in late April. So we do have ideas for how we're going to do our anniversary. We will upload a video at a later time explicitly about that. So expect that also in the near future.
Yes, we cannot wait. I know that some of you leave comments on a regular basis. We love and appreciate you so much. And we've been trying to find a way to interact with you. And we think we may have come up with that idea. So watch this space because we got something for you.
Yeah, we'll punch out the details and then we'll get back to you. But thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review and see you next time.
Bye.
Ooh, and